I was about to make a reaction video to the Old Soldier cinematic that was just released by Blizzard, but then I thought, do we really need another one of those? In my mind the answer is no, so instead I thought I'd try and do something useful and put Varok Saurfang's story into context. I know there are plenty of you watching who don't follow the finer details of Warcraft lore, so hopefully this summary will be useful for you. Anyway, let's get into it. Varok Saurfang is one of the Horde's oldest surviving veterans, having fought in the First, Second and Third Wars, as well as featuring in many of the key events during World of Warcraft. Varok was born on Draenor as a member of the Blackrock clan. The name of his mother and father are unknown, but we do know of his brother Broxigar, who fell valiantly defending Azeroth from the Burning Legion. That's actually a very interesting story in its own right, but we'll leave that on for another day. When Blackhand became the first war chief of the Horde, he elected Saurfang as one of his lieutenants. Shortly after that, Varok drank the blood of Manaroth alongside Grom Hellscream, and of course they then became corrupted by the Fel. Saurfang, however, doesn't use this as an excuse like many of the old Orc veterans. He actually takes responsibility for what happened next, because he chose to drink freely of the blood. He took part in leading the Orc soldiers against the Draenei, sacking the great city of Shatrath and murdering many defenseless citizens, including children. Varok is still haunted by his actions to this day, despite knowing that he was under the influence of the Fel. We know Saurfang had a mate who died around this time, but we don't know her name. However, we do know that in her final days, Varok promised her that their son Dranosh would not take the Fel, and that he wouldn't cross the Dark Portal into Azeroth. Not wishing to break that promise, he left his son in Nagrand and travelled through the Dark Portal under the command of Blackhand. On arrival in Azeroth, Saurfang led his orcs into battle against the humans. They cut down everything in their path, initially dominating the humans in every battle. Varok then supported Orgrim Doomhammer when he, not Anduin Lothar, killed Blackhand and took leadership of the Horde. Sorry, Warcraft movie. Doomhammer, recognising Saurfang's ability as both a warrior and a leader, made him second in command. It wasn't until the end of the Second War when the Alliance forces, led by Anduin Lothar, were finally able to crush the Horde in a decisive victory that pushed them back to the Dark Portal. Varok, however, wasn't one of the orcs that returned to his homeworld. It seems to be unknown whether he was captured and put into one of the Alliance internment camps like Thrall was, or whether he managed to evade capture and he just managed to survive somehow. But either way, we don't hear of his story again until the events of Warcraft 3, where he takes part in the battle for Mount Hyjal. By this point, the demonic blood curse had actually been lifted thanks to the sacrifice of Grommash Hellscream, who had managed to kill Manaroth but had died in the process. Varok then spent a lot of time helping veterans to come to grips with the atrocities that they'd committed under the influence of the Fel. Though, as we mentioned earlier, he's never truly been able to forgive himself for his own actions during this period. He's far too honourable to accept that the Fel was responsible, and the fact that he was tricked by Gul'dan when drinking the blood in the first place. This brings us to the events of World of Warcraft, where he was pretty quiet in the first two expansions. Most notably, he led the Horde against the Karaji during the Silithus campaign, in which we opened the gates of Ahn'Qiraj. In Wrath of the Lich King, Varok's story picks up again. He was tasked by Garrosh Hellscream to lead the Horde invasion of Northrend, with the ultimate goal of defeating the Lich King. Tragically, during the battle at the Wrathgate, Varok's son, who by this point had left Draenor and was now a soldier of the Horde, fell to the Lich King himself. Another event that haunts Varok to this day. Even more tragically, this wasn't actually the end for Dranosh. Arthas raised him as a Death Knight, who he eventually had to kill during the raid of Icecrown Citadel. The Alliance were present at Dranosh's death, and at first Muradin wouldn't let Varok pass in order to claim his son's body. However, Varian Wrynn, who at the time was High King of the Alliance, then turned up and he ordered Muradin to stand down. Varok tells Varian that he will never forget this kindness, and after burning his son's body, he tells the Horde heroes never to forsake honour, perhaps inspired by Varian's actions, among other things. This explains the scene in the new cinematic where Varok's kneeling in the snow, cradling his dead son. Following the fall of the Lich King, Varok was left to command the remainder of the Warsong offensive in Northrend. However, he returns to Kalimdor for the siege of Orgrimmar, which takes place during the Mists of Pandaria expansion. Saurfang, wanting to honour his promise to Garrosh Hellscream that he would kill him if he ever led the Horde down a dark path again, entered Orgrimmar with Thrall, even though General Nazgrim said that he couldn't ensure their safety. It turns out that Nazgrim was right, and after Varok became injured by a Mantid, who he subsequently killed, he told Thrall to go on without him. He was left there until the heroes sieging Orgrimmar encountered him, and he was able to leave. He was genuinely saddened to hear of the death of General Nazgrim, despite the fact that he had chosen to ally with Garrosh. He recognised Nazgrim as a warrior of both honour and loyalty, much like himself. During Garrosh's trial, Varok wanted him to be judged in the traditional Orcish way, and rather than being executed, he wished for Garrosh to face him in the Mok'Gara, which is an Orcish tradition in which two warriors fight to the death. Of course, Garrosh escaped before facing his judgment and was later killed by Thrall. After this, in Warlords of Draenor, Varok works with the Horde commanders to overcome the threat of the Iron Horde and the Burning Legion. Which brings us to the Legion expansion, where it's not 100% clear whether Varok actually fought at the Broken Shore, and there is mention of him being left in command of Orgrimmar's defense. However, he was present at the death of Vol'jin and the ceremony in which Sylvanas became War Chief of the Horde. Following the Argus campaign, in which we defeated Sargeras and finally put an end to the Burning Legion, he took part in the victory parade in Orgrimmar. During this event, Sylvanas noted to herself that though she respected him, he was the most likely Horde leader to challenge her for the title of War Chief. Should she step out of line, of course. But come on, with Sylvanas, that's almost inevitable. Quick warning by the way, we're about to go into spoiler territory if you haven't done the Battle for Azeroth pre-quest. Following the discovery of Azerite and the outbreak of war between Horde and Alliance, Varok led the Horde forces against the Alliance in Ashenvale. Though he led the Horde forces honourably in the campaign and was against killing citizens for no reason, he did dishonour himself when sneaking up on Malfurion and stabbing him in the back to protect Sylvanas. He stated immediately that he regretted the blow, and for that reason he refused to finish Malfurion, who was then taken to safety by Tyrande. Subsequently, he was present when Sylvanas made the decision to burn Teldrassil. And as we all suspected, based on the Old Soldier cinematic we just watched, he's disgusted by her decision. We see him in the final moments of this video walking out to meet the Alliance, presumably to make a last stand and ultimately to have them end his life. However, Zappy Boy then reminds him that for many, all that they have left is the Horde, and regardless of Sylvanas' decisions, he still has something to fight for. At that moment, the Alliance start to advance on the city, and Varok returns to the walls ready to make his stand. During the battle itself, regardless of his presumed hatred for Sylvanas, we do see him inspired by her daring charge into the Alliance front lines. He raises the Horde banner, lets out a war cry, and leads a charge directly at Anduin Wrynn himself, knocking him flat on his ass, and presumably he would have even killed him if not for Genn Greymane. Anduin then recovers, rallies the Alliance, and the cinematic ends with both factions about to clash in a battle that we're not going to discuss in this video. You're going to have to wait until the launch of Battle for Azeroth for that one, I'm not going to spoil it for you. So that brings us to the end of our story. I hope this brief summary has allowed you to understand a little more about the story of Varok Saurfang. That's really the aim with my lore videos, to summarise. There are already people who cover the lore in amazing depth, most notable of them being Noble of course, so I wanted to take a different direction for my own content. So far I've covered Jaina Proudmoore, Sylvanas Windrunner, and Kalia Menethil, as well as putting out a summary of the Legion story. I'll put a link to these videos in the description down below, and hopefully next week I'll also be able to give you the story of Anduin Wrynn. Anyway, that's it from me, you take care of yourself and I look forward to seeing you next time.